Hey everybody, what's going on? This is the third episode of Two Nerds, One Podcast. My name is Scott.
And I'm Jacob.
So today's topic we're going to talk about is a little bit of reminiscing and a little bit of retrospect about our college experience and also being in university college life. So to start with, I think the first question would be, Jacob, did you go to college?
I did.
Where did you go to college?
I went to a state school, Western Illinois University. How about you?
Okay, I went to North Carolina State University, and I'll just tell a little bit about it.
Yeah.
They have something, it's a huge college, so they have something like 30,000 undergrads and 12,000 grads. So it's quite a
Yeah.
big campus, and it's located in Raleigh, North Carolina. What about your university?
Yeah, I think mine is 10,000. Now I have to look it up. Oh, it's shrunk a lot, I think. It says the enrollment is 5,000.
Why do you suppose it shrank, just out of curiosity?
They have had a hard time getting students enrolled. Long story short, Illinois has had a problem with funding colleges. So I think people are wary of going to school to a state, in a state that maybe is not going to fund their colleges.
So we can definitely talk about that a bit later. Just the question is, what did you study?
English. English literature.
Okay, that's quite funny because I studied English languages and literature as well as the major, and I had a minor in German.
Yeah, my minor was in creative writing.
Creative writing. Okay, that fits. Fits definitely. So I think the most interesting question is, so we're both in the U.S. and
We were both in the U.S.
yeah, okay, yeah, I'm in a different country, but I grew up in the U.S. and ever since I was young, I had an expectation from my parents that you need to go to college, you get a good job, and start a family, get a house, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, what was the situation for you like in high school? How did you get to choose this college, and how to say it, what kind of expectations were put upon you for finding a program?
Yeah, that's an interesting quandary, only because I don't know how to explain this without making my mother sound terrible, but basically, I have a single I come from a single mother household, and so I was the youngest, so I think I wouldn't say I got the short end of the stick, but there wasn't a lot of thought put into my further education. She sort of left it up to me to figure it out, which I don't know if you've ever given a 17 or 18-year-old complete freedom. It sort of doesn't really work out well.
Yeah, it's kind of unstructured and it just goes wherever.
I mean, part of this too is like I was never like an ideal student, right? Throughout high school, I never really did homework. I actually went into high school in like the remedial classes and had to like work my way up to just like intermediate, and then they refused to put me in advanced courses because I just didn't do the work. And part of that was because I was so bored I didn't really care.
So you didn't apply yourself?
Right. They refused to put any work into me, so I refused to put any work into what I was doing.
Well, you sure fucking showed them, didn't you?
I really nailed it to them. To my mother's exasperation of like, Jacob, just do the work and then get what you want. Basically how I got into college was probably like May or April of my senior year, and at work, one of my uncles there, he used to live above my work, my grandparents owned, and he came in and he said, have you any thought about college, and like, what are you doing after school, and yada yada yada. It was coming up, right, and all of my friends had either gone to colleges or applied to colleges or even got in, and everyone knew what they were doing. So he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it.
So how late in your high school career are you at this point? Is it our senior year? Or?
Yeah, senior, like typical graduation day would be like June, and this was probably April or May.
Okay, wow, so pretty last minute.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't know, I don't think I could get in. My grades were not good. I was always a very average is probably what you would think was like a B student. I was more of a C or lower student. I didn't never really applied myself. Found
Do you remember your GPA in high school, just out of curiosity?
it was below 2.5.
Okay.
So it wasn't good. A bit of backstory too is like in my group of friends there was sort of two groups. One was like the people that aren't going to go anywhere and aren't going to do anything, and they're going to live at home and work retail the rest of their life, and most have, is one group. And the other one was they're going to like the best universities or really good ones, and there's straight A students. They have A's in the high-end classes and whatever, right? So they were going places, and I didn't know like where I fit. I obviously was not. I didn't feel like I was gonna work in retail. I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I didn't want to. I knew I wasn't a straight A student, and I wasn't in any AP, right, advanced placement.
So you were between two worlds.
Yeah, I was sort of like, I don't know, where do I fit in? And so my uncle was like, just apply to the college that your other uncle, who's more or less a father figure, long story short, but he's like, okay, just apply to that school and see if you get in. And I think his thought was like, well, he's kind of a failure, and so if he can't get in, then, my uncle could use some of his clout to get me in, because
Okay.
he had some
Connections, yeah.
right. He had connections there. So I apply and get in, and they got back to me quickly. But I went in with basically a warning. I forgot what they called it, but it was basically like, if I don't get good enough grades, they'll kick me out.
Probation?
Probation.
Period?
Yeah. Right.
Oh, that must be a great feeling for your self-esteem.
Well, honestly, I didn't think I was going to get into any college, so that was a pretty big boost.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went in undeclared. So even better, right?
Right. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sort of how I got into college. I more or less fell into it. I don't think my uncle's connections played a role. They said that they didn't need to look into it. I don't know if that means, but I went in, either way, I went in with a probation. I think it was the first.
So what was the expectation then? You had to keep grades above a certain GPA, or?
I think it was like B's or better.
Okay. For anyone international, we have something called a GPA, grade point average. So that is how good your grades are in average. And most of the time, colleges are looking at a 3 or a 4 would be a really good chance to get in, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, and the other part of that too is like each letter is given a amount. So like A is a 4, B is a 3, etc. So
yep.
Yeah, you're given a amount.
Did your college also look at because some do A plus and A minus? Was yours one that had that or no?
They didn't look at it, but my school wasn't my high school wasn't out of 4; it was out of 5 for whatever stupid ass reason.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like AP classes were worth more. So if you're in an AP class, it was worth like 5 instead of 4. Mm-hmm. If you had an A in an AP class, that was 5. If you had a B in an AP class, that was 4. So you could get
kind of wacky. Yeah.
It doesn't exactly seem fair to those who are in the normal courses, but whatever. That's not what high school is about. Fair, is it?
True. So when you say you had a 5.0 GPA and you applied to college, would they have to do a conversion, or would they just take 5 as the number?
No, they wouldn't even take. Yeah, when you had to fill out forms, you just fill out a 4 basically. If you had a 5.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
It was and didn't even make sense.
It's a bit tricky, yeah.
They only wanted the AP kids to feel special, I think.
To motivate them to do more.
Mm-hmm.
So you got into college with the probation.
Yeah. I'm
just trying to think back to mine. Did you have to take a SAT test as well, or?
Yeah. So I'm in Illinois. I was in Illinois, and they have in the Midwest take ACTs. So we took.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, we took ACTs, and they had another one. It was hilarious because they want you to take all your tests at the same time, which is really great for a student.
Absolutely.
We took they called them ISAT. It was like a Illinois, so you could figure out how well your high school is doing. Which is really funny because you take late as a senior, and full well like this will help your school get more money. It's like, I don't care. Like, I'm leaving. So basically everyone just filled them out with like patterns in the letters and didn't give a shit.
It's definitely helping the education system there.
It's like relying on 18-year-olds to take this test that doesn't matter. You're already done with school, so your school can get more funding. It's like, what the fuck is this? No one cares.
Somehow that seems like a messed up metric to get more education funding.
Yeah. They have different school levels take it, right? It's not the same test, but you also take a version of it in different parts of your education.
Okay, got it.
Elementary, middle, high school, etc.
Yeah, we had something called the end of grade EOG tests, and you had to take it for every year. And I think you actually you got graded on how well you performed on it, mm-hmm. and that might have also been tied to funding somehow. Yeah. So if you had a bunch of really high performers, then maybe that district doesn't really need as much money as lower performers, let's say.
Just doing my job.
Yeah. Yeah. So by me, I had a situation where I knew I wanted to go to college, but I had no idea which one. And I'm from North Carolina, and they have, in the area I'm from, 4 or 5 big universities, and in the entire state, something like 15 different universities. So I was a bit overwhelmed with the choices. And eventually, I don't even know how I made the decision, to be honest with you. I think I just picked the one that I thought would be the cheapest. That was not a technical college or a 2-year degree. And so I remember sitting in my senior year, and we had to get these recommendation letters from 2 teachers to be able to get in. You know, you have to jump through all these hoops to apply.
Sure.
I'm sure it was very similar for you as well.
I did not need any letters of recommendation.
Ah, man. Okay. I had to approach teachers, especially as a 17-year-old. It's kind of a nerve-wracking thing to go to a teacher and say, hey, will you write something that recommends me to get into college? And I wasn't really a great student in high school. I had maybe a 3.1, something like that, GPA. And I never said anything in class at all. So I'm really surprised they knew who I was even. But both of the teachers looked at me really seriously and said, if that's what you want, I'll do it. And I was thinking, I don't know what the fuck I want. I'm 17, man. So they both did. And then I applied. Then I had to take the SAT. And at the time the perfect score was 1600, and I was dumb as a rock. So I had I think 1050 or 1100, which is very, very low. And I was so bad at it that my name on the SAT was even put in wrong. So they couldn't even match. It was put in so wrong that they couldn't even match my real name to the results. So there was a big discrepancy there. So that gives you an idea of how good I was at testing. And then the college said, yeah, sure, whatever, come on down. And then they made us also take a subject test because I wanted to study computer science because I liked computers at the time. I mean, I still do. And so they said, okay, it's a very math heavy thing, so we need to place your math test. And I did one, and so they had it was done through the state testing system. I don't know what they're called, but I think it was like an LSAT or something. And then I did awful, really, really horrible. So they put me in like the lowest math course available.
Perfect.
Yeah, and at 18, I felt like I wasn't really ready to decide my entire future. What about you?
Yeah, man, when decided. So
yeah. So you were looking to get the college experience and then figure out more about what you want to do for a major.
Yeah, I think even my mother, just go and figure it out while you're there, because otherwise you'll never go, which probably was true for me, right? It's like a lot of people say, well, I could even say this now, right? It's like stupid to go to college right away after high school. It is, but I don't know if I'd ever go. I would never have gone. I didn't.
I see that both sides of that debate. A lot of people say taking a gap year and then just thinking about your life really helps.
Yeah.
And then other people have the argument that you just mentioned, where if you don't do it right away, then you'll never do it. And I see merit in both sides, but I don't know what the quote right unquote answer is for that.
No, I don't know either.
I do feel like at age 18, it's really tough to make big decisions about going to a 4-year university.
Well, it's really asking what you want to do with the rest of your life and figure it out.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out what I wanted for breakfast.
I know what you mean. Sometimes it's still that way by me, but you know.
Right. So
let's talk about the first experiences when you're there. So did you live on campus the first year, or?
Yeah, I lived in an all-boys dorm.
Okay, so what was it like moving day?
It was hectic and crazy. And it was exciting, right? It was very clear that I was living on my own. I guess like other people had been primed on like what college would be like, and I had no idea. So it was kind of like I don't know. I was just figuring everything out on my own. No one in my family had gone to college. I wasn't really prepped that way.
You were the first person?
Yeah. My brother went to tech school, but really he just went to a tech school as close to Arizona State possible so he could go and party. I think that was his whole thing.
Good call.
So like, I don't know if you could really call that quote unquote going to college. I mean, he left home to party for 2 years.
Did you have a roommate or were you on your own?
I did. I had a roommate. His name was Bryce.
Was it rando or someone that you knew?
It was random. Yeah. They had you fill out like a thing, but as everyone knows, none of that shit, like, might as well not have taken it.
Tell me about Bryce.
He was probably like 6'5" or taller. He was huge, dude.
A giant guy, wow.
He was a real idiot.
Why do you say that?
He didn't know how to talk to anyone about anything besides sports, and namely baseball.
Okay.
Like legitimately be like, oh, hey man, what you up to? And you're like, oh, doing this work or whatever. I'm like, ah, cool. I like try to have a conversation and be like, oh, okay. I like one word answers or two word answers.
Ah, okay. So we hadn't
Like he wouldn't.
found social finesse yet.
Yeah, and not that I don't blame him. I don't think he really liked me, which is fine. But I was only his roommate for I think only one semester, maybe less, because next door there was a guy. There's two guys in another room, and they never really got along. The long story short is it turned out one of the guys was black, and the other one was a racist, more or
Oh
less.
shit. Okay.
I don't remember how it happened. I had to sign a piece of paper that said that I would allow this other guy to move into my room, and they just switched rooms. I had a new roommate about like half. I think it was second semester. It might have been even earlier than that.
Did you get the racist guy or the other guy?
No, I got the black guy. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We got along. We were friends before that too, and so like he would, I mean, constantly complaining about it. I don't really blame him. Um,
That's a really tough situation to be in for him, yeah.
yeah, he and I got along swimmingly, and those other Bryce and this other guy, I don't even remember his name, were friends at two, so they were both awful, both of them. And I say this because so everyone on our floor was like friends, our whole floor.
How many people are we talking?
There's probably like 20 or more.
Wow, okay, that's a lot of people.
Everyone was at least cordial, but I would say 80% were close friends. It was very clear that there were outliers.
And how did
And
that
so, like,
manifest themselves? How did you notice that there were outliers?
because like 15 of us would go to parties every night or whatever, and two wouldn't.
Okay.
They were never invited. We would never buy beer for them. We would, yeah.
So was it illegal that you were underage or?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
This was
okay.
senior. It was freshman year, so
Okay.
you have to be in the U.S.
Makes sense. Yeah. I will talk a little bit about my experience. I lived on campus for 1 year, and I also had that similar questionnaire about the lottery of roommates. And so I filled out the three questions. So the first one was, do you like to listen to music? Second one was, do you like to stay up at night? Or how do you like to stay up late at night? And the third one, I don't remember. But I got some dude named Brian who is the worst fucking human being on the planet. I'm pretty convinced because I can just describe the move-in day situation. So my mom was very kind and drove me to the campus with like a few boxes of my stuff.
Sure.
Then the way it was arranged is we had ensuite, so there's a locked door, and then you have five different rooms with also doors, but you don't really have to keep them locked. They're mostly open all the time.
Uh-huh.
And so mine was closed, and so I knocked on it, and this dude opened the door. I had exchanged emails with him. So here I am, like a doofus with the box in my hand, and then my mom is behind me also there. And we walk in, and on the left-hand side, there are two bunk beds. So without asking, this dude already claimed the bottom bed, because it's, what you do. And he had a sheet draped over the bed, and there was a naked lady in in the bed already, and I
Whoa.
just remember my mom saying, "I think there's a lady in there," or whatever. And then the girl started laughing because it was so absurd. So I'm like, "Yeah, we'll just come back in a few minutes or whatever." And so that was my first introduction to meeting him. Like, and we shook hands and
Sure.
stuff, and who knows where his hand was a few minutes before that. It was kind of weird. And this guy was like a jock. He was a guy from Ohio, and I don't know how he chose the university. I think I do remember his major was chemistry, and the NCSU has a big emphasis on science and chemistry. So
Yeah.
he chose that. And he was a big jock, like I said, but he had a bunch of quirks. And one of them, which I think you can appreciate how risky that is, but he liked to smoke weed in the room.
Oh, sure. I
And
knew those guys.
yeah, and it doesn't bother me personally. I have no problem with it, but we had a policy at the university that if you are caught smoking weed or with weed in possession at all, then both you and your roommate will be expelled. So it was kind of a
Yeah.
dick move from him to do that. So he would do that occasionally, and I would always ask, like, "Hey, man, go somewhere else and do that." And to his credit, he would. It was very nice of him. But the problem was he'd be high as fuck and come back, and at like 5 a.m. He would only play live songs from archive.org of jam bands that were like 3 hours long, the recordings, and then he would like crank up the music. And I just remember one night I woke up and I was like, Brian, what the fuck are you doing, man? Turn that shit off. And I just remember his response was so goofy. It was something like, I need to crank up the tunage, man. It's just like some typical thing a stoner would say, right? And then he would just do random stuff. So one time he got really into this video about Dianetics, which I'm sure you know what that is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was watching this Scientology documentary, and he and his friends were drinking 40s of something and also mixing it with really high potent pain medicine so that they would get all loopy. And they were watching this Scientology video and saying, oh man, this makes a lot of sense to me. This is exactly what we should get into, you know? And I'm just watching it thinking, oh my God, these poor people, they don't realize.
You're watching people join a cult?
Yeah, I was kind of seeing it in action, you know? So I'll just give you a couple more examples to why he was the worst roommate ever. One time he got drunk with balls and brought a girl back, and he knew I was there, and they screwed for like hours. And I pretended like I was asleep because that was the most graceful exit from that situation. Because if I'm on the top bunk, right, and if you have to like get out and leave, then it's gonna be pretty obvious. So that was probably the most awkward few hours of my life. So
good for him for lasting so long, I guess.
Yeah, they must have. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they took drugs or something. But then he would just randomly do stuff. Like one time I had a friend of mine over, a lady, and then he just decided to walk in with the skirt on and saying like, it feels pretty good. And we don't know if it was his skirt or someone else's, but he just randomly just was parading around in that, which is fine, don't get me wrong, but it was just unexpected, you know? And a last anecdote I'll regale you with is he one time just looked at me and said, man, I really need to get some of that dark meat, and referring to the black population on campus. And so it was kind of like borderline racist, what he said. And,
sure.
And to his credit, he did go out and get some of that. So good for him. But it was just an extremely random and kind of unprovoked statement that he said. So,
sure.
So basically, if you can imagine the most chaotic and crazy person ever, that's who I got as my roommate in college.
Yeah, I just got a brain dead jock who gets shoes off at night. He only took his shoes off at night before he went to bed, and the smell permeated the room.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Like taste his sweaty feet.
Oh.
And he went to bed early, like 9:30 in college.
I think he had a case of old manitis, you know.
I was like, I don't know. It's not like I was a night owl, but Jesus Christ.
Did he have to wake up early as well, or?
No.
Okay. Just needs to sleep. No. All right.
He just went to bed at that time. That's the time he went to bed. So I was like up on my computer until, I don't know, 10 or 11 or whatever every night, because I don't know what you did in college.
Definitely. Whatever. That's the minimum, right?
Weird.
Weird. So I was wondering, with the classes, could you describe something about how that was for you? If there was a class that you remember in particular, or a class that you really hated or really liked? What was the class workload like for you?
Yeah, so I guess early on, I think almost all of my classes were large classes from how many? Probably like 50 was probably the smallest of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the large was probably 200 maybe. It was a huge, one of those lecture halls.
The ones you see in movies, right?
Yeah. It was funny too, because at least this lecture hall that I had, is interesting that thinking about it, I think all of them were this way, was you'd walk in on the ground floor and you'd open the door to the classroom, but the classroom would go down like a story and a half or 2 stories of just seats. It's like, Jesus H. It's like you were just not expecting that, like, especially as a college student, just walking in.
You want to feel special and not feel like a number, but yeah.
Yeah. Weirdly is I kind of like, I don't know, I found a lot of joy in that. At least, so I guess sort of speaks to my college, my high school career too, is like there wasn't a lot of like learn on your own. And I think that is mostly how I enjoy to learn. At least for me, like my Psych 100, whatever it was really engaging. I really enjoyed that class. Actually aced that class. I know for a lot of people that is their hell, but like that I don't know why. I don't know if it was the teacher or if it was the size or I was able to quote unquote learn on my own. I had no problem in that course. Yeah, and that was the other thing that I like too, I guess to tell the story a little bit. I went in undeclared and then I was a business major for like half a semester maybe. I should have stuck that one out because they were newly forming a supply chain management degree, which was like in huge demand right then. This was graduated in '07. Before Amazon became a juggernaut kind of thing. And
Right.
yeah.
Kind of foot in the door time period.
Yeah, and my college had a very close relationship with John Deere. And for those who don't know, John Deere is a farm. They're a heavy equipment company, mostly focused on farming equipment. They have like a feeder program basically from their business to John Deere. Yeah, their big thing was supply chain management too, right? It's like sending a cog halfway across the world in 2 days or whatever.
Right, trying to keep up with production schedules and
Right.
anticipating demands. Yeah.
So like that would have been probably a good one to keep. But I think what happened was like I would really like a professor and then want to pick up that degree, and then I would get the next professor in that degree and then not like them.
Right, kind of hit or miss with the professors, right?
Right. So like I was undeclared, then I was supply chain management, math for a semester.
Really?
I was
Math, okay.
yeah. And then I was a English ed and then just English. I think there was another one in there for some reason, but I think those were the main ones that I was the longest.
Damn, son, that's a lot of changing.
Yeah, and what's so funny too, I liked math because I was pretty good at it. And this relates to what we were originally talking about was the self-taught. They would teach the concepts and then like you would just do work. I had a high school teacher that was exactly the same way. It's like he'd go up there and be like, okay, here's the concept. This is how you do it. And then the rest of the class, either you doing your homework or you getting help with your homework from someone in class.
Right.
So I found that most beneficial to me. I could pick it up and do fine. I don't need to sit there for 20 minutes and hammer it in, and I got the concept. I could hold it in my head long enough for the test and, throw it away later. But that's why I liked math. But the reason why I didn't keep my math degree, I think there was a 200 or 300 level, I think it was a 200 level math course that all business majors had to take, right? I can't remember what it was. Calculus, maybe? It was a calculus course, I think. And so I was 3/4 of the way through this calculus course. And I said, so I was like, all right, I'm going to switch over. And then I was looking through the forms or of the classroom, I don't know, the booklet that you get about each major. And I was in like 231, but the math major required 232, calculus for math majors or something stupid, right? So I went to the advisor and I said, I see here that this is required. What's really the big difference between this class and that course? He's like, well, this one's really for math majors, and so you'd really have to basically take the whole course over. I said, well, that seems kind of silly. Like, what is the exact thing that I'm missing? And it was the cosine, tangent, and so forth of derivatives. I was like, all right, so one concept.
That's it.
One concept I have to take a whole course over. And he looked at me and was like, yeah, it's pretty important. I was like, all right, well, I'm not doing this then. And left. I was like, are you fucking, I'm not going to waste my time on a whole, you're going to make me retake an entire course for a concept? One.
Right.
Well, yeah. I was like, all right, then I'm not going to be a math major, dude. I don't know what to say to you then. Like, I thought it was the dumbest waste of my time. I'm sure it would make sense, like, if I understood the content, whatever. But I don't know. Maybe he did a terrible job explaining of what the differences were or whatever, but...
Right. I think in general, the advisors could be very hit or miss if you had a good one or not. And some people obviously did not care about the people they were trying to advise. So maybe you got unlucky.
Most did not give a shit. You were lucky to get one that even remembered your name.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was my experience.
And that was part of the reason why I liked English too, right? It's like, that's why I really gravitated towards English, because it wasn't really a lecture course, which I know I just said I enjoyed But I found quickly that some of the lectures were either great or the absolute worst.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I really enjoyed about English was that you would, at least at all of my courses, you would go in after having read like 4 chapters and then you just talk about them.
Yeah, and different interpretations, usually, unless it's a very cut and dry text, but you could usually get different perspectives.
Totally. Well, it's funny too, because I took a course, I took one course with this English professor where it was a lecture. And then I went to the department chair because you had to go to the department chair to get a class changed. I went to the department chair. I was like, look, I can't stand this professor because it's a lecture. I didn't sign up to English to get lectured to. That's not really why I'm here. And then he turns around. He's like, that's my best friend.
So did you get the class?
I was like, I'm sorry, but I don't like this course.
It's great, but it just doesn't work for me. Did you get the change?
Yeah, I changed out of that one. It's just like, I was like,
A
oops,
sitcom
sorry.
moment there. Yeah.
So I was really ragging on the guy. I was like, oh, he's boring, and there's,
The worst.
oh, Jesus.
Oh dear.
I don't know. I felt like that, at least for English, that's why I liked it. It was a discussion,
And more open-ended, yeah.
right, rather than a lecture. Is that what your English courses were like?
Yeah, I studied language and literature, and I had kind of a mixed bag. So I did some technical writing courses, which is what my career is now. And I also did some really interesting courses on syntax and grammar in English, and they were actually really, really hard because, yes,
Oh, really?
I think it was something called modern grammar, where you would be given a sentence and you'd have to do the punctuation, but it was really exceptional scenarios, or it would say this sentence is wrong. What is wrong with it? And then you'd have to identify the particular error, and a lot of times it was something like a verb-subject agreement, or the wrong tense was being used. But for some of those, you could just look at it and read it over and over, and it looked fine, but it's just the modern day usage of English has deteriorated a bit, not deteriorated, but it's evolved a bit to where sometimes you write things more formally than what you speak, right?
A lot.
So
Yeah.
I had quite a mixed bag of courses. I had some that were really paper heavy, so I'd have to write a 20-page paper every week, that kind of thing, just for one class out of 4 or 5 that I was taking. So that was kind of a lot of workload, but somehow I always managed at the last minute to write those, kind of shit those out, and then send them in, But I think I loved every course that was about literature and having that discussion like you were talking about. That was really, really enjoyable for me. And that's when I realized,
Right.
I guess I should back up a bit. I don't know if it's the same at your university, but at NCSU, the first year you have to take a bunch of bullshit introduction classes for everything, including stuff like sports. So
Yep.
I had to take a bowling class, right? And then I wanted to do computer science. And then I had to do a bunch of math for that. So very math heavy, which makes sense and all that. But I was in the math class and I realized, shit, I cannot do this. And it was probably one of the most soul-crushing, feelings you can experience in college, is where you realize that you're just not able to do the work, despite trying to go to like tutoring and stuff. It just wasn't clicking. And I don't know what that says about me, but I decided,
Wow.
okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something else. And I realized how much I enjoyed the introductory literature classes for English, so I decided to switch.
I took. It's funny. I did this more or less the same thing, right? It's like I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then this might be true of most degrees, but there's always like one course that sort of like is make or break. Like if you can put up with this class, then you can be this major.
Right. We call them the weed out courses.
Sure. Yeah. And so the professor that taught that, he was probably one of the most badass professors that I've had. He's like this super eccentric dude. He like is very flamboyant and expressive and like really smart. Kind of like no bullshit too. He doesn't like, if you're gonna be an asshole or whatever, he doesn't like fuck around. Like, so he's just like character. And that was the professor for so you call it the weed out course. And it was like something about how he taught and what we did in the course. It clicked with me. I was like, yes, this is it. This is fantastic.
So he was an influential factor in why you stayed with that major.
Yeah, of course, right? He wasn't, I wouldn't say he's a reason, but he definitely helped shape what my understanding of like what education maybe could or should be.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a professor that's passionate about teaching. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and
hit or miss, right?
yeah, to the point of like, if you don't get it, like, then leave. Not like in a rude way.
Right.
This is what it is. If you don't like it, get out. I don't, and it still sounds rude, but it's not that. It was like a compassionate, get the fuck out. I don't know how to describe it better
Right.
than
It was like a
that.
plea for if you cannot get with this, then might not be the right thing for you.
This isn't for you. Right, right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
So we're kind of in the closing few minutes of our podcast, and I just wanted to ask the big question, which is, did college prepare you for life after college?
No.
No. Why do you say that?
I guess I don't know what I expected. A part of it is it's the same thing that happened in high school is like what are you going to do with it, right?
Sure.
I left college in going into grad school for an MFA in creative writing.
Mm-hmm.
I had delusions of grandeur of writing a book that other human beings would want to write, but long story short, I came to realize this is going to sound fucking insane, but in my grad program it was that I didn't want to like read anymore, and
Sorry.
I didn't really enjoy reading.
Okay.
I didn't enjoy reading, and everyone else like just loved reading, just loved it, and would talk about books all day and all the books that they loved, and oh, do you remember this part of the book? And it's like I don't know. I couldn't get into it the way they could, at least everyone in my grad program, and I felt that I was never very good because of that.
So you,
I would never be as good as anyone else in my grad program, and so I dropped
so
out.
you felt intimidated by your
Yeah,
peers.
everyone was so good. I knew I couldn't swing it, so I left. It was like big fish in a small pond at my college, right? So I like everyone else that it was in my writing course was like I'm not tooting my own horn, but they fucking sucked, right? Like they weren't good at writing. They were just in a writing course.
Right.
They were garbage. Like I'm not a good writer, but they were very bad.
And then you make the transition to the grad program, and then it's the exact opposite.
Right. Like it was very clear that I didn't fit, so I left.
That must have been pretty hard.
Was it hard? I don't know. I think it was. It's like a nice revelation, right? It felt like a relief of like, okay, I can check that off my list. Like that's not going to happen for me, and I can move on. Right.
Okay, so you tried it and you said it's not working, and you're going a different
Right. So
direction.
I started, looking for a quote unquote career. College is more than the classes you take, right? It prepared me for what expectations I want out of like a person that I live with, or how to do my laundry, or how to create a livable space, right? How to share a space with another person, how to say manage my finances, but I still don't do that. But,
One day, one day.
uh, I don't know how to transition into quote unquote adulthood, whatever that means anymore. When people ask that question, I sort of had the expectation of their thought is I was a biology major and I work now at like a aquarium or wherever the fuck. Like, no, no,
Something related, right?
right. And it's funny too, right? It's like one of my creative writing teachers in college. It's like she always lambasted. One of my favorite teachers too. She lambasted that people who were writing, who could write and were very smart with language and had good writing prowess were stuck in marketing because that's where the money was, right?
Right.
And so, like, I think about that a lot of, not that I'm good at writing, that it paired me to work in marketing.
I was gonna ask for the record, what are you working in? But yeah,
Yeah, I work in marketing and specifically digital marketing only because I'm a nerd. But yeah, it's yeah, I hate it, but I guess she was right in a way. Yeah,
So in all, would you say it's worth it or not to have gone to college?
I would definitely say it's worth it. I mean, unfortunately, the way the world works now is like if you don't have a degree, you can't even get a restaurant job at this point. So
Yeah. I think we're both also keenly aware of how privileged we are to be able to have gone
Oh,
to college.
Jesus. Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
so lucky. I mean, really, the people that I knew in high school who did not, I'm glad I have the life I have now. Even my brother, right, going back a bit, right, he finally went back to school and got an actual like BA and not, a technical 2-year degree.
Mm-hmm.
And his career, his life trajectory changed a lot, right? He got it when he was, God, probably my age now, 35. And so I think he finally understood, like, it's so obnoxious, but if you want to do anything else besides what you're stuck in, you need a degree.
I totally agree with you there. It seems like the entry ticket to a certain tier of jobs, let's say.
It's messed up, but like, because I've done some hiring in my position, and it's like if they're not the only people we hire without a degree or would are like creative folks who like do art or whatever, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
if they are doing anything else, like an assistant of mine, they have to have a degree, which is obscene. Like it doesn't even make sense.
Right.
If someone didn't go to college but was doing with like started their own digital marketing branding, or they branded themselves and were selling shit on Facebook or whatever, that like I would rather have that person than the cum stain that came out of college with like like a semester in Google Ads and knows how to press an on button on on nothing else, right? It's like, and then, this could go to another conversation, but I guess I have a lot to say about like qualifications for a job and what it really means. And I think I don't know, pretentious, the I don't know what the right word is, but the barriers that we have to build in order to make people jump through hoops for shit that really doesn't require higher education. Perfect example of this too is like someone who didn't go to college and like coded websites, or someone that can do pen testing for security systems. Like those people don't you don't even if you got a degree, you wouldn't do any of that shit. So if you spent like 4 years or 5 years of your life doing that instead of being in college, I'd much rather have you than someone who just got a CS degree and knows how to make a ball jump through a hoop on CSS or something stupid, right? Like that's not applicable to what I'm looking for, but just because I have to check a box, it's the worst. And
Right.
and, and I'll say too, right?
If
Like
you,
now the new hoop, I'm getting into a part of my career now where the new hoop to jump through is a graduate degree, right?
right.
No one wants to look at my application unless I have MBA now.
Right. Despite the years and years of
Yeah, I have
experience.
15 years in marketing, but no one wants to look at it because I don't have an MBA.
It's a bit tough sometimes to get to the next tier. You have to jump through more hoops,
Right,
right? So,
right.
so I think this is a good place to stop, unless you have something else that you'd want to
Well,
say.
do you think your college has helped you prepare for, I don't know, your life? Did your education help you?
You know, if you had asked me at the start of this podcast, I would say no. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. But now that you mention it, the whole set of soft skills that you develop when you're in college to communicate with people and to share a space with them, to learn how to deal with other cultures and attitudes, especially political or in some cases racist attitudes, then yeah, college was worth it in that sense because I made a lot of social connections and it got me started in the professional world, let's say, because I actually started working at a department in the university, and then I ended up doing full time with them for 6 years after university.
Wow.
So it wasn't what I planned on
Yeah.
doing. It was IT support. Hey, if you look at what my original goal was, it was to be computer science, and I ended up working in IT department afterwards. Then I guess that's pretty close to what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Whereas the school system was constructed in a way where I wouldn't be able to have obtained that CS degree, unfortunately,
Sure.
just because of my limitations with math. So yeah, it's interesting. It's so long story short, I think it's not what I expected, but it definitely got me somewhere, and I'm pretty cool with
Mm.
it.
Yeah, I would say it just sets you on a path, and unfortunately, it's like that nod to privilege. It's so obnoxious, but it's like that on an application, did you have a degree or not? It is
Yep.
the key, is the what you need to open.
Right. if you say no, then you can pretty much guarantee you're not even going to be looked at, which is very sad. But it seems like that's the way the system is set up for a lot of countries with jobs. So any other final words before we do the outro?
Whether or not you agree you need college, I would say, I think like that part of your life is always going to define yourself a bit, right? No matter what you do.
I mean, I would say more than a bit. It was extremely influential for both of us.
Sure, right? Like even if I didn't go to college, I would say that part of my life was pretty foundational.
Moral of the story is go to fucking college, kids.
I would say do what you think is right for you.
That sounds much more reasonable and sensible.
Hey, thanks for listening. We appreciate you actually clicking on the play button. We're so sorry you had to listen to it.
Absolutely, really, really sorry.